Just awful. It is 18 minutes past 8 now on Sunrise. More on our top story. The growing calls for a police investigation and prosecutions over more than 450 deaths at a Hampshire hospital. An inquiry found the patients died after being given powerful painkillers without medical need. Well, now their families want justice. And I'm joined by Bridget Devine-Reeves, spokesperson for the families, and her grandmother died at the hospital. Thanks very much for being with us this morning. What were your initial thoughts? What was your reaction when you finally saw this report?
It was very, very difficult because it's been a 20-year struggle for us. We've been closed down at every turn and, we have been through the proper channels, let's say, all the different complaints procedures, and every single government body in Quango has literally told us that there's no case to answer and we should just lay down and accept that. But we were so sure as a family that the way in which my grandmother died was completely inhumane. And as more and more families came on board through the media, then this was in the early 2000s and the first police investigation kicked off, we realised we weren't alone, and that made it even more important to give these families a voice and to make sure that we push forward. So when the bishop spoke yesterday to us at the Portsmouth Cathedral, and I think his words were the historical battle for the families, we can say that we've heard those struggles, and we can say that your concerns are substantiated.
And you brought
everyone broke down. Yeah,
so you brought the report in. It's a hefty document.
It is a hefty document. I mean, there's no comparison to the paperwork that I have at home, which literally fills a room from from floor to ceiling of documentation to every government body, police documents. When we went through the inquest statements, you can't imagine the bureaucracy that's gone behind getting us the justice that we still seek. Tell
me about your grandmother and what happened to her.
My grandmother lived with us since I was about 3, after my grandfather passed away. She was a very strong and supportive lady. She was our rock. I mean, it's essentially why we're here today. She went into a local hospital to be treated for a UTI with routine antibiotics and fluids, and she was discharged. But at that time, my father was undergoing a bone marrow transplant in Hammersmith, so we didn't want her to come home to an empty house, because we were obviously all up in London with him. So they recommended that she go to Gosport, where the ward was specifically for people to recover and have respite. So we thought she was in the best care. They knew she was going to be there for a block of 6 weeks. That's how long we thought that, my father would be at Hammersmith. And 4 weeks into that stay, we got the call to say that, she's got 36 hours to live. And it was only the day before that my uncle and my auntie had visited, and my grandmother was sitting, and she signed her pension book. And some years later, when we eventually got her full medical file as part of the inquest, there was a document in there from an external doctor who had seen her the very morning that Dr. Jane Barton had prescribed the fentanyl patch, which in those years was only licensed for chronic intractable pain due to cancer, which my grandmother didn't have.
She was there for respite care.
She was there for respite.
You say that you've been brushed off all the way along. What are your hopes now that justice will happen?
Well, we knew 4 years ago when the panel formed that their terms of reference would limit them in what they could do, which is why we were fighting at that time for public inquiry, because we wanted it judge-led and we wanted people questioned. We want people questioned now. We want it to go into a criminal court. We've started a GoFundMe page called Justice for the Victims of Gosport, where we hope to raise funds for us to get a barrister on our side, because there's been so much funding provided to the doctors and nurses who have now been exposed for their treatment of these elderly people. And now it's time for the families to get their justice in a criminal court.
Well, Bridget, you speak extremely well on what has been a horrific, almost 2 decades, as you say, time for your family, and we do wish you the very best, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Still lots more to come here on Sunrise, including all the sports. Rob has the details.